From Chicago's Can TV, a look at the week's events is reported in the newspapers, in the blogs and online, and on radio and TV. This is Chicago Newsroom.
Well, hi there. Welcome to the show once again. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank my Facebook friends who have sent me the invitation to a page devoted to shutting up Rush Limbaugh once and for all by boycotting all of his sponsors, and to explain why respectfully I'm going to decline the offer, because as bizarre as this concept is, I'm in the same business as El Rushbo. We both work in the media. We both do our best to persuade people politically and socially. For some reason, he seems to be a bit more successful at it, but you know, that's the way it goes. I've just never liked the idea that the way to respond to someone you disagree with is to silence him. Put him out of business with better, more well thought out ideas, convince the public he's wrong, or even wait patiently until his ideas are just so discredited that people are tired of him. But as the old-timers who built our country used to say, the cure for bad speech is more speech, and nowhere is the concept of more speech more alive and well than at places like right here at Can TV. We love more speech. Oh, do we love it. So let's have more speech about some important things that are in the news this week. Discipline in the public schools. Who gets suspended and why? Is the system serious when it says that it's working to curtail out of school suspensions? And what about that strike at UIC? Will it have impact? Did it raise awareness? Sex offenders are back at the training programs at the CTA, and City Council is looking at mandating kill switches on cell phones and a higher minimum wage, and on and on and on. There's so much to talk about this week that we are very happy to have Ted Cox back with us from DNAInfo. Ted,
my pleasure.
Thanks for being back. And our old buddy Sarah Karp from Catalyst Chicago is here, and just fresh away from their policy forum this morning in Chicago, which was here on Can TV, of course. Where else? Because we like more speech. But if you don't mind, guys, I'd really like to start with that UIC thing, the two-day, whatever you want to call it, information strike that they just did, because it strikes me that it has the potential for being something with legs, something that'll be talked about for a while. I don't know if it's on the same level as, you know, the thousands of CTU teachers walking down Michigan Avenue with their red T-shirts on, but when we look back over the last couple of years, we think of that as being a kind of an important moment.
I think that's what they're trying to tap into, right?
Is it the
want
same?
To keep that initiative going. Yeah, because I think that I think CTU definitely sees that as a victory, and that they're carrying the banner of labor, and I think that the UIC would like to get into that as well.
And even more than that, in all the universities across the country, this is an issue. And U of I is a big campus, and they're big players in the higher education field. And I do think they want to see this strike, spread to other campuses and have people realize, not only just other faculty realize that the full-time faculty and the adjunct faculty, that their future is tied together, but also that parents should realize who is teaching their kids and what kind of quality education they're getting. And it also comes into this, and where I see a real big connection with the CTU strike, with the Chicago teachers, is the question of tenure. And that's a big issue in elementary and education, because tenure has been really obliterated in the last couple of years. But also with the faculty at these universities, I mean, there's fewer people who have tenure, and so I think that's a big issue. Is it really a good thing to have faculty, teachers have job protection?
Yeah,
and how much job protection should
well,
they have?
I think we've seen, and I mean, this is just an observation, but the growth of adjunct faculty, as it's called. I mean, it's almost using like the fast food model or something. It's just like you just bring in people for very little pay, you have them for just a day or two a week, and they can pretty much replace your professional staff over time. There's one crusty old wag that I know who says that really the university's long-range plan is just to let the faculty die off and then replace them with part-time, non-status employees. I mean, is that what's going on here?
I think that they certainly have an argument.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, who's paying for it? The state does not support these universities the way they used to. I mean, when I went to college, which was, last century, but not that long ago.
It was a different century.
Tuition was $350 a month. Can you remember that?
97 for me.
Yeah. And it's the state just is not supporting these universities like they were. So I mean, if you pay the professors more, who pays for it? I mean, it's probably going to be people who are already paying record tuitions at state. It's just not the deal that it was back in the day.
So is that a justification for this then? Is that you're saying that's the direction we have to go?
It's something that I think everyone has to look at about where's the money going to come from. I mean, you can go to how many people are already in line in Springfield with their handout.
And of course that has a direct echo with what we're seeing with CTU and with teacher unions all across the country, and with just public service unions, this notion that we just can't afford this anymore. We used to, somehow or other, we used to be able to afford it, but we can't anymore. I'm not sure I completely understand why we could afford it 20 years ago and we can't afford it now, but we hear that argument all the time.
And it's really coming up in the pension fight that's going on right now. I mean, yesterday, thousands of public service workers, including teachers, were down in Springfield saying, we don't want this pension reform. And, Karen Lewis, the head of the Chicago Teachers Union, her point is that we can afford pensions, that we just have to prioritize, and we need to look at bringing in more revenue. We don't need to look at, taking away pensions. She put out a pretty interesting report on Friday talking about how if you cut pensions of police and firemen and teachers, it destabilizes neighborhoods because that's where, especially in Chicago, where you have to live in the city in order to get these jobs. I mean, their money is going right back into their community, and a lot of times in communities, the retirees are the most stable people there. So what happens when you take that money out of the communities? So I mean, she's trying to make this larger point that we can't afford to take the pension away, but at the same time, I mean, there's something like $600 million due from CPS to pay for the pension this year, and no one knows how that's gonna play out. So there are questions of money. And
I think of all the things we've talked about at this table in the last 4 years, the biggest conundrum of all is this idea that you have public service people who have spent their lives working in the public service, expecting a pension into which they have paid and have, in most cases, surrendered Social Security, and find themselves at the point now where they're about to start collecting this, and the government has not lived up to its end and has systematically underfunded, and now just throws up its hands.
One of the ticking time bombs, one of the many that Daley left for
Ron. And not just Daley, the state legislators and governors for the last 10 or 15 years, and now this feels very much to me like, remember years ago with the pilots at United Airlines and with the big airlines and stuff, where it's just like, oh, I'm sorry, I know you worked for us for 30 years, but screw you, we don't have the money, you're out of it, it's just gone. And this feels like the same kind of thing, but to me, and again, this is just me talking, there's a difference here, because you are talking about people who gave their professional careers in public service. They were not just, and I shouldn't say just, working in an auto plant or a manufacturing plant. There's no just about it, but they were picking up our garbage and keeping our streets relatively safe and putting the fires out and teaching our children. And now we're just saying, screw you.
And on top of that, everybody knows a teacher, everybody knows a fireman, everyone knows a policeman. I mean, these are, it's not just one plant. I mean, this is all over the city. These are the people of our community. So I do think that they have, they can enjoy some public support for that, because they are there.
And they're making the point right now where what is commonly called pension reform is actually translates, as far as they're concerned, in a reduction of benefits. And they don't want
my
that.
pension.
Right.
Right.
Now, let's also be clear here. I mean, I'm not monolithic about this. I do recognize that medical advances and social advances have made us all live much longer, and the idea that somebody can work for 25 years and retire when they're 52 or something like that is absurd and shouldn't be permitted. And yes, we probably should work longer than 65. As somebody who's almost 65, I can see that, there's a few more years there. You should be able to work productively. So there are all kinds of pension reforms that I think need to be made. But to just go back on deals that your government made in your name 20 years ago and then just abrogate it seems wrong somehow to me. But that's me.
It's a precedence for Social Security, though.
Yeah.
All the boomers moving through it.
Yeah.
There's just no money there, so too bad.
Right. Well, but of course, it's something we've known about since the day that Social Security was created, and we know how to resolve that. We just have lacked the political will to do it. That's been our problem. So maybe we're arguing against elected government.
We want somebody with a true political will.
That's what we need. Here's a strong man. We
Right.
need someone who can come in and we had that, didn't we, for a mayor for a while? I don't know. It didn't seem like it worked out all that well.
Some argue we still do.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right. Yeah. Oh, yes, I forgot. Yeah. So there has been, along these lines, there's been a lot of talk in the last few weeks about these various public service unions sort of building some kind of broad coalition. And we're really seeing some of the fences getting rattled, but does it mean anything? I guess it's the same question, but I guess the thing that would change the discussion is maybe more people unified in one spot. Does that mean anything? Does that change the dynamic in any way?
They all have similar interests, so it only makes sense that they would ally. More people, more power.
But would anybody listen?
Well, I think that when you're talking with teachers getting together with police and fire, then yeah, I think that is a really powerful alliance. I think, and I think that's probably their only and best hope is to ally and push back against the pension reform.
I mean, I would imagine that if I, God forbid, were mayor, not that anybody would want that job, but I would think that probably one of your biggest fears would be all of these folks just waking up one morning and just kind of presiding a united front, because part of the dynamic that's been going on for a few years is this kind of divide and conquer thing of like you just deal with one little union and you cut a little deal here and then you try to split them all up. But if they all suddenly started singing from the same playbook, that would be singing from a playbook.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's what the mayor was trying to do with the agreement that he had with the sergeants. That the rank and file then sort of put their pressure on to those to vote it down, and that's what happened, I guess, about a year ago. So
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, when the teachers were on strike, the policemen who were, riding their bikes, sort of patrol, they were totally on the teachers' sides. I mean, the rank and file policemen.
You saw that.
Oh, they were, putting their hands up, and I mean, it was a lot of camaraderie. And so, I don't know if Ron's at all scared because I know he's got a lot of money in the bank. But if there was a candidate who could be a champion of that, I think there would be, because these are a lot of people who are out there and they're not happy. I don't think.
Of course, the question that I always ask here that can't be answered, but to me it's this very interesting thing to ponder, is that I can't help but get the feeling that once you get outside of the immediate families and the immediate noise of these public service unions, there is a vast swath of the city, like maybe 7/8 of the city, that really just doesn't care about these issues at all and would be perfectly fine if you had a mayor who just came in and just hammered them down.
And they don't understand them. I mean, there is a perception that like teachers and firemen retire way early. And that's true that they retire before most people do, and that they, that they're getting a lot of money. And one of the points that I know the teachers make a lot is that it's not really that much money. It's like $40,000 a year is the average. So I just think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what this is, and at this point, so few people are guaranteed any type of pension that it does people start to say, well, why them?
Right.
No, everybody else isn't going to be out here,
Because it was negotiated, and the other thing is that it's in the state constitution that they can't miss it.
Right,
mess with it.
right.
They're going to have to go to the courts.
But that
to
does
change it.
seem to be one of the really powerful arguments is, hey, I lost my pension 10 years ago. They stuck me into some 401k and I've now got $20,000 for my retirement and you're telling me I got to pay more money so you can get a fat pension? Why are you better than me just because you were a fireman and I was a laborer in a industrial plant?
That's the threat that the mayor has made all along with this. Is like if this $600 million bill comes due, you can't do it through property taxes. It would double property taxes or more.
Right,
That's where your 7/8 of the city gets
that's
up,
right.
gets riled.
Right. So they were chanting Karen Lewis's name yesterday in Springfield, saying "Run for mayor," but she demurred. I understand.
Yeah, I can't even comment. But yeah, she's certainly looking though for a candidate, but I don't think it's going to be her.
And I don't think even she thinks that candidate is her. So yeah. All right. Well, we can kick this one around for a long time, but. You guys both covered a very interesting press conference a few weeks ago with Barbara Byrd Bennett, where she essentially announced that CPS was, how do we put this, changing the way that it disciplines students, and that they were kicking a lot fewer students out than they had. And that seemed to play pretty well in the media for a day or two, and then, well, certainly you, Sarah, started running some numbers and kind of debunked a lot of that. The numbers are not quite the way they're saying it. The numbers are up in certain categories and so on and so forth. So run this down for me. Help me understand this.
It all started with an exclusive that they gave to the Tribune saying that suspensions are down. And that was the story. The next day, the press release came out, and their number was different from even what they had in the Tribune. So when you start seeing percentages get shifted a little bit, you start saying, well, what is the basis? What are the actual numbers? And the big thing is that
all of the CPS is notorious for that in any number of different areas.
That's right.
This is always
okay, but wait a minute. Hold on. Now we talk about journalism on this show more than we talk about anything. You're telling me that the press office gave a story to the Tribune, and that the stuff they gave them turned out to be either incorrect or they changed the numbers?
Well, this is the problem. What they do is they slightly change the definition of what they're giving them, and then it's like right, but it's like a very small little slice of rightness. It's not.
Wait, let me write that one down. A small little slice of rightness.
But so part of the reason why this is all coming out is that the advocates have been pressing CPS for many, many years to publish school-by-school suspension data, which is very, very difficult to get. And they won an agreement to do it. And so that
was Project NIA?
This is Project NIA and a few other folks. And so that's supposed to happen sometime very soon, maybe even today.
That's right. Barbara Brennan was saying that they were scrubbing the data still.
Yeah, they're scrubbing the data.
to get it to be a little slice of rightness.
Right. So before you get the school-by-school numbers, they're going to put out like an overall percentage, right? So it's sort of this way the way I saw it is sort of smooth the waters. They know these school-by-school numbers are going to show different things, right? And then they're going to have to talk to that, but now they've got all the media putting out a story saying suspensions are down, so it sort of negates this school-by-school data, which isn't going to show that.
Yeah, well, the gist of the reforms is that they want to bring students more into it, peer reviews, that sort of thing, which tends to work, I would imagine, better at the high school level than it does, as you showed, at the grade school level.
At the elementary school level. Well, so what happened in the midst of all this is, out of nowhere, into my email account came a confidential CPS report about suspensions. And basically what it showed is that elementary school suspensions are actually up and have been rising. And the biggest increase is in pre-K and kindergarten suspensions, which is
so bizarre.
It's bizarre because why would you, and actually in the student code of conduct it says you cannot suspend pre-K and kindergarten students. So people are like just going against
We're talking about 4-year-olds?
4 and 5-year-olds.
Is that just this year?
It's over the last 3 years that you see a.
Well, they are. I mean, like, and how have they accounted for, like? I mean, Rom has been boasting about bringing full-day kindergarten to students. I mean, is that a natural rise with that? More students, more suspensions?
It might be, but I also just think that there's something. I think there's always been preschool and kindergarten suspensions. I think that maybe we're seeing something like there's more on the book than before, because people would send your kid home and say, hey, your kid's acting out. But now this is an official suspension that's on the kid's record, over time in kindergarten. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I got suspended when I was 4.
That's right. And for what?
Your transcript
for what?
will follow you through your life forever.
Yeah, I mean, it's true.
Well,
it
it's
does.
actually
It
not
does
a
go
laughing
into
matter. Those things can, right?
Right. I mean, your suspension on your record doesn't look good. And also, what does this tell the kid is that if you act out, you get to stay at home and watch PBS all day.
Right.
You know, hopefully it's PBS, right?
Yeah.
So it's sort of an interesting thing where I think that, I mean, my hypothesis is that they knew that when the school-by-school data came out, it was going to be clear that elementary school suspensions were perhaps going up. So they wanted to put out the story that, and really when you got down to it, is that there is a slight decrease in high school suspensions. However, the other kind of odd thing about this is that, you know, the number of high school students has decreased by about 6,000. The ones that are being in district-run schools, not charter schools. And this data does not include any charter schools. So, you know, if you say there's a 10,000 drop in suspensions among high school students, but yet there's 6,000 fewer students, you could make the argument that maybe it's just that there's less students to suspend that you're suspending.
Although, in fairness, those 6,000 who they presumably went into charter schools, right? Those 6,000, they're probably not the suspending types. Is that a fair thing to say?
The charters actually have their own deals going on with suspensions and fines.
But they're not reported. Is that what I understand? Charters don't have to report them?
They keep their own data.
But they're not reported as part of the even though they're CPS. They always point out we're CPS schools and we get CPS money, but they don't have to report.
They don't have to report it in exactly the same way. However, the state does an annual survey of charter schools and asks them how many people they suspend, and I FOIA'd that data. And there's a number of charter schools, some of the big ones like the Noble Street Network, that have really high percentages of kids that they suspend. So
or detentions then.
Detention. And so the fact is that really when you look at it overall, including charter schools, which are public schools, we actually might be seeing a huge increase in suspensions, not a decrease in suspensions, but that's sort of the side story.
So I'm not clear on this. Who actually, I don't even, what is it? What is a suspension? Who decides that you're suspended? Can a teacher suspend you? Can a principal suspend you? Are there written rules that say you have to accomplish this, and this before a suspension can happen? Or
there is a code of conduct, and that was one of the things that Barbara Burden was talking about them changing. Is this zero tolerance thing where if you do this, then you get that. A 3-day suspension, 1-day suspension, and they want to make it more. So that this gray area, like your local peer review, your peer jury, would determine a lot of these things. So it's no longer so cut and dried.
And has that passed? Is that policy now?
That is policy, and she said it's changing, and they should have another code of conduct. I think she said later this year. But the other thing is that this is a nationwide movement and push because the Obama administration and Arne Duncan have drawn attention to how suspensions tend to be unfairly meted out to minority students.
Well,
and that's in Chicago. It's very true. I mean, the data that I was looking at, it's something. It was about between 77 and 85% Black students are being suspended, and they only make up 40% of kids in our school district, and they're primarily males, like over 70% are male students, so it's probably mostly Black male students who, you know, as they get older, they drop out more, they go to prison more, and maybe when you start, you know, suspending them in kindergarten, because a lot of studies have shown that even one suspension any time in your elementary school career greatly increases your likelihood of eventually dropping out. So, you know, you start these patterns.
We talked earlier about ramifications.
Right.
That's just another of the lifelong ramifications.
Right.
Well, anyway, it's a fascinating thing, and I really encourage taking a look at it. It's in Catalyst. It's up right now on the website. You should take a look at it. Ted, we got a couple of minutes to talk about the rest of the stuff going on in the city. I was intrigued by this thing that the city council is talking about making mandatory kill switches on smartphones.
Started out as a resolution that they passed, advisory resolution for the Federal Communications Commission to insist that phone companies and carriers, manufacturers that is, and carriers insisted that their phones have a kill switch, that when your phone gets stolen, you can remotely disable it so that it can't be used again and resold, which I guess evidently there's a big market, and that's why people steal them, is to resell them.
That would really put a crimp in the.
You would think. The problem, though, is that a lot of critics have said that the manufacturers and the carriers have no interest in this kill switch because they make a nice money, a lucrative business in reselling phones and in selling insurance to cover them. So it's sort of like this is an attempt to push those reforms.
Right. Well, I mean,
now it is, in addition to that original resolution which passed, now Bob Fioretti and Ed Burke, unlikely allies, have joined in sponsoring a city council resolution that would make it illegal to sell a phone without a kill switch in the city.
Wow. But of course, the question is how you define the kill switch. Does it put the phone? Does it actually terminate the phone or put it into a coma?
Well, that's one of the things.
There are lots of smart people out there who know who
right.
know how to
That's
open
one of the
it
things
up
that somebody else brought up was that hackers could potentially hack into this and then send you a text message saying, "Send me so much money through PayPal, or I will disable your phone right now." So I mean,
I hadn't thought
technology
of that.
is always moving forward, and the criminal element always seems to be on the edge.
I was just imagining that there within an hour there would be places in Chicago where you could take your bricked phone and they would be able to get it back in operation.
So the technophiles have said it would be better if just all the companies agreed not to reactivate phones that are brought in that they don't know the history of. So it's a debate, but I mean I think that this does seem to have the support, like I said, of these two very guys at the opposite ends of the spectrum in the council, and is likely to get some kind of action.
That is an interesting idea, because if the carrier says no, we are not going to put service on this phone, then the phone is worthless and it's not worth stealing. But they'd have to agree to do that.
Exactly.
So, and there's no real financial incentive for them to do that. And after all, it's all about financial incentives. As
and it is a cutthroat business. As we already know, they're all trying to steal customers from each other.
I just imagine the little puny city council speaking to the mighty Apple Corporation and saying, "Thou shalt not sell phones in the city of Chicago."
That's the funny thing is that the police call this Apple picking because of the iPhone, but Apple has actually been progressive on this, and their latest operating system does have a kill switch on it.
Right, I know. We have just a minute left. What is the status of minimum wage in Chicago? I hear there are competing proposals?
They do. There are seemingly contradictory. The council passed a resolution at its last meeting, sponsored by John Arena and the Progressive Reform Caucus. Then this was an advisory resolution sent to this state, the General Assembly leaders, backing Governor Quinn's call for a $10.65 minimum wage. Well, now Rahm has a competing resolution that will probably come up at the next council meeting, and that's backing President Obama's call for a $10.10 minimum wage, and that's going to the Illinois congressional delegation. So, at the same, they're pushing in the same direction. Just one is pushing farther than the other.
And where's Rahm?
He's at 10.10.
He's at 10.10. All right. So one way or the other, there's going to be there already is
support for this widespread among the populace as well, and it seems to be finally gaining traction in the various legislatures.
Wow. Guys, thank you very much. Once again, we've eaten up every moment of our allocated time, so you'll have to go back out there and keep observing things so you can come back and tell us more and more a little later on, all right?
Sure thing.
Sarah Karp, thank you so much from Catalyst Chicago, and thanks for putting on that policy forum today, too. I tell you guys, good job. Thank you for being here. And DNAInfo's Ted Cox with us once again.
Thank you.
We'll have you both back again. And it's all about you. You have been watching Chicago Newsroom. It's the community service of CAN TV right here on the mighty CAN. And you can, of course, see us here, but you can also at any time check out the mighty YouTube and watch the show right there on your smart device. And you can also get the iTunes podcast, too. I'm Ken Davis. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week right back here on Chicago Newsroom. Bye.